The ledgers at Renfield were kept in a hand so precise that the new steward had assumed, when he first saw them, that a man must have written them. Column after column, ruled in iron gall ink gone the colour of dried blood, each entry dated, each carry brought down and proved, the whole of it balanced to the farthing at the foot of every quarter. It was Miss Ada Varell's hand, and she was 23, and she sat now at the long table in the estate room, with the December light failing behind her, and a man across the wood who had come 40 miles to take the house out from under her. "You will find the arrears are not arrears," she said. She did not raise her eyes from the page. "You will find they are a bookkeeping fiction of Mr. Cadwell's, and I can show you where he made it, if you will give me an hour." The Duke of Hesketh did not sit. He stood by the cold hearth, in a travelling coat still beaded from the road, and he looked at her the way men look at a thing that has said something they did not expect a thing to say. "I have not come to be shown anything," he said. "I hold the note, £1,100 against this estate, dated 4 years back and never serviced. The law is not complicated." "The law is not," Ada agreed. "The arithmetic is. May I?" She turned the great book round on the table so that it faced him, and she set her finger under a line, and she began. She did not hurry, because the work would not be hurried, and rushing it only made a plausible liar of you. She showed him the posted figure, the 1100, and then she showed him the counterfoil, the stub of the receipt Cadwell himself had signed, kept in the estate's own file because Cadwell had been too careless to burn it. And the stub said 700, and the difference was £400 that had been entered as owing and had never existed at all. Then she showed him the interest, compounded on the phantom 400, as though it were real, quarter upon quarter, 4 years deep, until the fiction had grown legs and become a debt that could carry a house away. "He wrote the 400 into the principal in the spring of the year my father died," she said, "when there was nobody here who could read a ledger and challenge him. Then he let it breed. By the time you bought the note, Your Grace, 3 parts of what you paid for was weather. It was never lent. There is no man it was lent to. It is ink." Hesketh looked at the counterfoil for a long time. He was a large, still man, with a face that gave nothing, and the silence went on past the point where most men would have filled it. Then he said, "You keep the stubs." "I keep everything," Ada said. "It is the only power a woman without money has. She writes down the hour." He should have gone. He had a carriage, a driver, a warrant of possession folded in his breast, and a night's lodging bespoke at the posting inn 8 miles back toward the London road. Instead, he sat at last in the chair across from her, and drew the ledger toward him, and said, "Show me the rest." That was how the Duke came to Renfield to collect a debt, and did not leave that night, nor the next, nor for the whole of that hard, bright winter that followed. And the county, which loves nothing so much as a thing it can misunderstand, decided within the week that the plain Verrill girl had somehow got her hooks into a duke, and pitied him for it, and never once considered that she had simply been right about the money, and he had been honest enough to see it. He stayed because the fraud went deeper than one note. Cadwell had been at Renfield 11 years, steward to a dying man, and then to a dead one, and the ledgers Ada had kept ran alongside the ledgers Cadwell had kept, and the two did not agree. And every place they disagreed was a place where money had walked. She had known it for 2 years. She had said nothing, because to accuse the steward was to be turned out by the trustees as a hysterical girl, and she had nowhere to be turned out to. And so she had done the coward's arithmetic, and kept her head down, and written the true figures in a book nobody read, and waited for a day that might never come. That silence was hers. She would name it before the winter was out, in front of people, and it would cost her. But that was later. In the first week there was only the work, and a house that had been let go cold to save coal, and a duke who would not go home. Renfield, in that December, was a house holding its breath. 9 rooms shut and sheeted, the long gallery dark, the good coal sold, and the household burning the cheap dusty sort that spat and gave no heat, in only 3 grates, because Ada had done the sum, and the sum said warmth now was hunger in March. She kept the house running the way a woman keeps a watch running that she cannot afford to have mended, by knowing exactly which part is failing and nursing it. She knew which chimney drew and which smoked. She knew the cook, Mrs. Pauncefoot, was watering the milk, and she let her, because the alternative was less milk. She knew to the pound what was in the meal store, and to the day how long it would last, and she carried all of it in her head, and none of it in her face. The Duke was given the blue room because it was the only made bed above stairs, and Ada carried the warming pan up herself because there was no one else to do it, and found him standing at the black window looking out at nothing. "You needn't stay, Your Grace," she said. "I have shown you the note is bad. Take the counterfoil to your own man of business. He will tell you the same. You are not obliged to see the winter out in a cold house to be sure of £1,100 you were never owed." "No," he agreed. He did not turn from the window. "I am not obliged." She waited, and he did not explain himself, and she was too tired to draw it out of him. She set the pan in the bed, and moved it under the sheets in the slow figure that keeps the linen from scorching, and the small domestic sound of it filled the room, and she thought he had forgotten she was there until he spoke again. "The last house I was sure of," he said to the glass, "I ruined a man in. Legally. Correctly. Every figure right. He hanged himself in the spring. He said it the way a man reads out a weight. So I have grown slow, Miss Verrill, about being sure. I would rather sit in your cold house a fortnight and be certain than be right by post and wrong, in fact. You will forgive the imposition, or you will not. It is the same to the arithmetic." She did not answer that. There was no answer to it that was not either a lie or too true to say to a duke on the second day. She finished the bed, and banked what fire there was, and left him with it. The first of the household to come round to her was the boot boy, which is to say the smallest and least considered person under that roof, a child of about 10 named Tom, who blacked what boots there were, and carried coal, and was cuffed by everyone. Ada had, that autumn, without making anything of it, begun leaving the heel of the loaf, and a scrape of dripping on the low shelf by the scullery door, where a short person might reach it, and saying nothing. And it had been eaten every day, and neither of them had ever once referred to it. Now, on the 3rd morning of the Duke's stay, Tom appeared at the estate room door with his cap in both hands and would not come in. "The gentleman's man," Tom said. "The driver, he's saying below as how you're to be turned off. Is it true, miss?" "Not today," Ada said, not looking up from her column. Tom turned the cap. "Because if you was turned off," he said in a rush, going red, "I'd not stop. I'd come with. I can black boots anywhere." And then, appalled at himself, he fled, boots loud on the stone, before she could say anything at all. And Ada sat with her pen, stopped over the page, and found that her eyes had gone hot, which was absurd, over a boot boy. And she wrote the date at the head of a fresh column, and mastered it. Warmth is a thing a house forgets it is capable of. It came back to Renfield the way heat comes into a cold room, unevenly, from one point, before it fills the whole. The one point was the estate room, where two people sat over books through the short afternoons, and it took the Duke a week to say a thing to her that was not about money, and when he did, it was only this, that she wrote her sevens with a bar through them, in the continental style. And where had she learned it? "My father," she said. "He kept accounts for a wine merchant in Oporto before he married. He said an English 7 and an English 1 are the same panic in a bad light, and a barred 7 has never yet been mistaken for anything." She dipped her pen. "He taught me the whole of it before I was 12. He thought I might need a trade. He was more right than he knew, and I have never forgiven him for being right about that particular thing." "You are angry with him," Hesketh observed. "I am grateful to him and angry with him," she said. "They are the same size, and they weigh exactly the same, and I carry one in each hand, and it keeps me level." She looked up and found him almost smiling, and looked down again quickly. "You may laugh, Your Grace." Most people do at that. "I was not laughing," he said. "I was thinking I had not heard anyone describe the inside of my own chest before." The days took a shape. In the morning she did the house, and he wrote letters. In the afternoon they did the fraud, side by side, the two sets of ledgers open between them, building the case against Cadwell entry by entry, and the building of it was slow and exacting, and she would not let him skip a step. He wanted, once, to leap from a discrepancy straight to the conclusion, and she stopped him with a hand flat on the page. "No," she said. "You cannot say he stole it. You can say the sheep sold at Michaelmas 18 months back went out of the fold. Here, 40 head, in the bailiff's own tally, and came into the book as 30. She turned 2 leaves. And the 10 that vanished between the fold and the ink are the 10 whose price is not here, and not here, and not here. You do not say the man is a thief. You show the room 40 sheep and 30 sheep, and let the room do its own subtraction. A number nobody can argue with is worth more than an accusation everybody can." "You have done this before," he said. "I have done nothing before," she said. "I have only watched it be done to me and worked out afterwards how it was managed. It is the same knowledge. It only costs more to come by. There is a particular afternoon that neither of them would afterward be able to date, though Ada dated everything, and its being undateable was the point. The light was gone by 4. Mrs. Paunceford had sent up tea because the Duke's presence had shamed the kitchen into finding real leaves, and there was even a plate of the hard little biscuits the cook made, when she wished to be forgiven for something. The fire drew well for once, and the two of them, who had spent a week being exactly correct with one another, fell somehow into an argument about whether a cat could be said to earn its keep. It began because a lean tabby, one of the barn cats, had got into the estate room and installed itself on the warm ledgers, and Ada had not moved it. "It earns its keep in the granary," she said. "A cat is a wage you pay in scraps against a loss in grain. It is the cheapest labour on the estate, and the only labour that cannot be corrupted, because you cannot bribe a cat." "You can," said Hesketh, "with more scraps. You have simply described a cat that has not yet been offered a better rate. A cat cannot be bought off its nature. It kills because it likes to. That is loyalty of a purer kind than any you can hire. That is not loyalty. That is appetite that happens to align with your interest. The day the mice paid better, the cat would keep the mice." "The mice," said Ada, with enormous seriousness, "have nothing to pay with. You have constructed an economy in which the mice have capital. I cannot follow you there. It is not sound." "I am a duke," he said. "I am permitted one unsound economy. It is in the charter." "It is not in any charter. I have read the charter. I have read every paper in this house, and there is nothing in any of them about mice." And she heard herself, and heard how far she had come from the barred sevens, and stopped, half laughing, expecting him to retreat into gravity as men did. And he did not. He reached out and moved one finger down the tabby's spine, and the cat leaned into it, and he said, "Then we are agreed the cat is corrupt, and we love it anyway." And let the sentence stand there in the warm room without armouring it with anything. And Ada let it stand too. And for a moment there was nothing in the world that needed doing. It was Mrs. Pauncefort, in the end, who put the household's change into words, because Mrs. Pauncefort put everything into words. She had cooked at Renfield for 30 years, and had opinions the way other people had joints. She had not liked Ada. She had thought her cold and clever in a way that was above her station, and had said so to the scullery. But she came to the estate room one evening with a candle, and stood in the door, and said, without preamble, in the tone of a woman confessing a debt of her own, "I said things about you, miss, in the kitchen. When your father died, and you took up his books, instead of taking to your bed like a Christian, I said you'd no heart. I want it said to your face that I was wrong, because I'll not have it only said behind your back, that being how the first wrong was done." Ada put down her pen. "You watered the milk," she said, "and I let you, because it fed the house another fortnight. We have neither of us any heart, Mrs. Pauncefort. We have arithmetic. I have always thought better of you for the milk." The old woman's face worked. "You knew about the milk." "I know about everything," Ada said gently. "It is my whole misfortune." And Mrs. Pauncefort gave a bark of laughter that was half a sob, and set down beside the ledger a small dish of the good butter that had been kept back for the Duke, and said, "Then you'll have the butter, and no argument, and I'll thank you not to write down that I gave it you, for it's stealing, and I'll deny it," and went out. And it was the warmest thing that had happened in that house in 2 years, and it smelled of butter. Are you somewhere warm tonight, wherever you are listening? Is there a lamp and a door shut against the weather, and something hot within reach? I hope there is. Stay a while by this fire. The cold part is coming, and it is better met in company. The cold part came at the midpoint of that winter, and it came, as trouble at Renfield always came, through the roof, the great barn, the tithe barn, 6 centuries old, that held what little the estate had brought in, and all the seed corn for the spring, began in a night of freezing rain turning to a wet weight of snow, to go. Ada woke to a sound she knew, because she knew every sound the estate could make. And this one was the low complaint of a principal timber taking more than it could carry. She was dressed and across the yard with a lantern before she was fully awake, and the Duke was there within minutes, in his shirt, because he had heard it too. The main tie beam had cracked at the joint, and the snow was still coming, and every hour it lay on that roof was another ton the wounded frame had to hold. And if the barn went, the seed corn went, and if the seed corn went, there was no spring planting, and if there was no planting, Renfield was finished whatever the ledgers said, because a house does not eat vindication. There was no time to send for men. There was the 2 of them, and Tom, and the driver, and old Mrs. Paunceford holding the lanterns, and a night to get through. What they did was rake the roof. The Duke went up. He was a large man, and it was madness, and he went up anyway, onto the groaning slope, with a rope round his waist that Ada belayed round a straining post, because she knew knots, a farmer's daughter's knots, and she fed him line and took it in and called the load to him. Slower on the north pitch, it's bearing more. And he dragged the snow down in great sliding sheets, while below Tom and the driver shored the cracked beam with a cart axle and a stack of oak fence posts, following Ada's word, because Ada had done the sum in her head in the dark. The weight of snow per foot of roof, the span, the residual strength of a cracked beam, the number of posts it would take to carry the load down to the ground where the ground could hold it. And she was right. And the barn stood. It stood because a woman who could not lift a fence post knew exactly where a fence post had to go. Toward 4 in the morning, the snow stopping, the roof lightened and shored and holding, the Duke came down off the rope with his hands torn and his shirt frozen to him, and he stood in the trampled snow of the yard, breathing like a bellows, and he looked at her, soaked, filthy, hoarse from calling loads into the wind. And neither of them said a word, because the thing that was between them at that moment could not have survived being said. He put out one ruined hand, and very carefully took a fragment of ice out of her hair, and let it fall. And that was all. And it was more than a declaration would have been. By spring, the case against Cadwell was complete. And it was that same spring that Ada learned the man was not to be quietly dismissed, but was to fight, and had powerful friends among the trustees, and had let it be known that he would counter any charge against him with a charge of his own. That Miss Verrill had kept a second secret set of books, had concealed the estate's true position for 2 years, and had done so to feather her own place. For what was a woman who hid the accounts but a woman with something to hide? The accusation was clever because it was nearly true. She had kept the second books. She had concealed the position. Her reasons were good, and her silence had still let the theft run 2 years longer than it need have, and one tenant family, The Harts at the Low Farm had gone under in that second year, sold up and gone to the town, for want of an abatement the estate could have granted, if anyone had known the estate could afford it. Ada had known. She had said nothing, and she carried the Harts in the same 2 hands as her father, grateful for her caution and unforgiven for it, level. There is a thing that happens to a woman who has taught herself not to want when she is caught off guard by wanting. It is not sweet. It came for Ada on a mild grey afternoon in March, in the walled garden, where she had gone to see whether the espaliered pears had survived the winter, and where she was doing the small correct work of loosening the sour ground at their roots. For sour soil is not dead soil. It only wants lime and turning and a season's patience, and she had the lime in a bucket and was working it in by hand because it was the sort of thing she did when she needed her hands busy and her face unwatched. She understood, kneeling there with the cold lime drying her fingers, exactly what had happened to her, and exactly why it could come to nothing. She loved him. That was plain, and she did not insult herself by pretending otherwise. She wrote her own accounts as honestly as the estate's. But she understood what his kindness was, and it was not what a girl in a ballad would have made it. He was a man who had ruined someone and could not bear to be sure again. He had stayed all winter, not for her, but for his own certainty. He was scrupulous the way other men were drunk, helplessly, to quiet something. What he felt for her was the gratitude of a man, to the instrument that let him be careful. He would settle the estate, to be sure it was settled right, and he would provide for her, because a duke provides, and then he would go back to his own country, and in due course marry some woman bred for it, and be kind to Ada by letter twice a year, and never know that he had walked through her like weather, and left the door open behind him. She knelt in the sour ground and looked at it without flinching, the way she looked at a bad column. Here is the sum, and here is the total, and the total does not care whether you weep. She did not weep, or not more than the lime accounted for. She named it to herself once, plainly. I love him, and he's grateful to me, and those are not the same size, and I will not pretend they balance. And then she stood up and knocked the lime from her hands, and went to see about the pears, because the pears did not know anything about it, and still wanted doing. The reckoning came before the assembled trustees in the great cold gallery of Wrenfield, opened for the first time in 2 years, and Cadwell had the better of the room when it began. He was a smooth, plausible man of 50 in a good black coat, and he had years of trusted service in his voice, and he laid the charge against Ada first, as he had planned to. The secret books, the concealment, the woman with something to hide. And Ada watched several of the trustees begin, comfortably, to believe him, because it is always the easier thing to believe. She rose when they let her, in her plain grey, with 2 ledgers under her arm, and the counterfoil, and the bailiff's sheep tally in her hand. And she did not raise her voice, then or once in the whole of it. I did keep a second set of books, she said. That charge is true, and I will take it first, because Mr. Cadwell is right that a thing hidden asks a question. I kept them because 2 years ago I found what you are about to see, and I was a portionless girl of 21, and I knew that if I brought it to you then, you would have believed him and not me, and turned me off, and the theft would have gone on without even my books to catch it. So I kept quiet, and I kept records, and I waited. That was my choice, and it was a coward's choice, and it has a price with a name on it. The Harts of the Low Farm went under last year for want of an abatement this estate could have carried. I knew it could carry it. I said nothing, because to say it was to expose that I could read these books too well for a woman who was supposed to be ornamental. I put my own safety before that family, and they paid for the winter I bought myself. That is mine. I will carry it. Now, the sheep. And she showed them the sheep. 40 head out of the fold in the bailiff's own hand, 30 into the book. She showed them the counterfoil against the note, 400 pounds of ink that was never coin. She showed them the sums slowly, the way she had shown the Duke, refusing to conclude for them, laying the 40 sheep and the 30 sheep before the room and letting the room subtract. It took an hour. She never once said the word thief. By the end, she did not need to, because a number nobody can argue with had done what no accusation could, and the trustees were no longer looking at her. They were looking at Cadwell, and Cadwell was coming apart. It was not loud, and it was not satisfying. The plausible voice went first. It reached for the old note, years of loyal service. Gentlemen, you have known me. And the words came out and found nothing under them and stopped. He looked from face to face for the comfortable belief that had been there 10 minutes before, and it was gone, and the going of it was visible. And he understood, all at once and too late, that the room had already decided. He did not rage. He sat down, slowly, as though his legs had been quietly informed of something the rest of him had not, and he put one hand flat on the table as if to be sure of it. And he was an old man who had run out of road, and there was nothing in the sight to enjoy. And Tom, the boot boy, who had no standing in that room and no business speaking, spoke, because one of the trustees had asked, sneering a little, who could confirm this girl's tallies were honest, and not themselves invented, and the silence had gone on a beat too long. "I can," said Tom from the wall, white as a sheet, his voice cracking on it. "I carried the bailiff's sheep sheets up to her every quarter day, sir, and I carried Mr. Cadwell's down, and they never said the same. And I can't read, but I know they never said the same, because she'd go still, every time, over Mr. Cadwell's, the way you do over a thing that's wrong. It cost the child everything he had to say it. His knees were shaking under him. It was the bravest thing done in that house all year, and it was done by the smallest person in it. Ada might have finished Cadwell then. The room would have let her. The room, having believed him, was in the mood to be cruel to make up for it, and one word from her would have sent the old man out with nothing, prosecuted, the thing pressed to the end. She looked at him a long moment. The flat hand, the failed voice, the fear that was all that had ever been under the plausibility. And she found she could not do it, and that the not doing cost her more than the doing would have, because he deserved the doing. "He is 60, she said to the trustees quietly. "He has a sister in Ware, who depends on him. Take back what the books say he took to the last farthing, and let him keep his liberty, and go to her. I have spent 2 years being made small by this man, and I find I have no appetite to make him small in return. It is a poor trade, and I will not make it." And she gathered her ledgers, and that was the end of it, and she said no more. That night she did not sleep in the house. She went down to the Low farm, the Hart's empty farm, and let herself into the cold kitchen where a family had lived, until her silence helped to end them there, and she sat in the dark on the settle with her cloak still on, and she reached the bottom of the winter at last. Old Mrs. Pauncefort found her there, having followed with a lantern on legs that no longer liked lanterns, and sat herself down on the settle with a grunt, and said nothing for a while. Then she said, "You gave the man his liberty, as didn't deserve it, and now you sit in a dead family's kitchen, giving yourself a whipping, as you don't deserve neither. There's no justice in you at all, miss. Only accounts." "I let them go under," Ada said to the dark. "The Harts. I could have spoken, and I weighed my own place against theirs, and I chose my place. He stole it, but I let it happen. That is the entry, Mrs. Pauncefort, and it does not rub out because I was frightened. A thing is not undone by being explained." She pulled her cloak closer. "I will go in the morning. I have set the estate right, and I have no place in a house I have set right by cheating first. He will settle it fair now. He is a fair man, and he does not need me here to be reminded of what I hid. I would rather go before he is only kind to me. I have been managing a long time on not being pitied, and I have not the strength to start." "You daft, proud, counting creature," said the old woman without heat, almost with love. "You've weighed every soul in this house but the one that matters, and you've weighed him wrong." But Ada only shook her head, because the theme of her whole life was in it, that a thing hidden asks a question, and she had hidden herself so long that no true answer could reach her now. And she resolved to be gone by the time the house was up, and Mrs. Pauncefort went heavily away to let her not sleep. And the Duke was not there, and did not hear it, and did not know. He found her at the Low farm in the roar of the morning, having got it out of Mrs. Pauncefort where she had gone, and having come the mile down the lane himself on foot with no hat, and he stood in the kitchen door with the grey light behind him, and made, badly, the only speech that mattered. "You are leaving," he said. "Pauncefort says, before I—" He stopped. He was a man who had not said a true thing aloud in years, and it showed. The sentence he had brought fell apart in his hands. "I doubted you," he said instead. "In the gallery, for the space of one breath, when Cadwell laid the charge, before you stood, I thought she did keep the books secret, and I felt the ground go, and I doubted you. One breath. I have doubted almost nothing so quickly in my life, and I will not forgive myself the speed of it." He took a step in. "I did not stay the winter for the arithmetic. I told you I did. I lied to you and to myself in the same sentence, which is efficient. I stayed because—" And here the plain man ran entirely out of words and had to stand in the wreck of the sentence, and then said only, roughly, the whole of it. "Because you barred your sevens so nothing could be mistaken for anything, and I have spent my life being mistaken for something, and I did not want to leave the one room where I was read right. Do not go, and let me come. It is the same to the— It is not the same. Nothing is the same. Stay." Ada looked at him standing in the dead family's kitchen with his ruined hands and his broken sentence, and she found the counterfoil of it, the true stub against the false posting, and the true figure was not gratitude after all. She had read one column wrong the whole winter, which for her was a thing so rare it undid her more than tenderness could have. "I named my fault to the whole trust," she said. "The hearts. I will not have it papered over. If you want me, you take that too. It does not rub out." "I know it does not," he said. "I have one of my own, I told you the second night, and it does not rub out either. And I was hoping—" The ghost of the man who argued about cats crossed his face. "I was hoping we might keep them in the same book. You are the only bookkeeper I would trust with 2 frauds and no lies between them." And she came to him across the cold flags of the Harts' kitchen, and put her lime-roughened hand in his torn one, which was the first time in the whole account that either had reached for the other with no task to excuse it, and that was the settling of it. They were married at the Low Farms parish in May, quietly, and the first thing she did as mistress of the reunited estate was find the Harts in their town and bring them back to a farm at a rent she set herself, because a debt with a name on it is paid to the name, or it is not paid. And Tom was made under-steward in training, and learned his letters at last from Ada at the estate table, barred 7s and all, protesting the whole way. Mrs. Pauncefort unwatered the milk and took full credit for the match to anyone who would stand still. Cadwell went to his sister in Ware and was seen no more, diminished, unprosecuted, tolerated in memory, and nowhere else. The estate took back every farthing and left him his liberty, which was more mercy than he had shown, and exactly as much as Ada had decided to spend. The Duke never did fully recover from the debt he came to collect. He had come north certain and correct with a warrant in his coat, and he went away from that reckoning uncertain of everything except her, and counted himself richer for the loss, and said so once, and never improved on it. The ledgers at Renfield are still kept in a hand so precise that strangers assume a man must write them, and at the foot of every quarter still the whole is proved to the farthing, and the 7s are barred so that nothing may be mistaken for anything it is not. So here is the question I will leave with you, wherever your lamp is burning tonight. When someone has taught themselves, out of long necessity, to read their own worth as a false entry and cross it through, how long does it take, and how much patient turning of sour ground, before they can read the true figure and believe it? Come back, and we will sit by another fire, and I will tell you another.